On today's video, we'll talk all about Grayscale and the institutional buyers and sellers of Bitcoin. And we'll really give you a definitive answer based on the data after the Bitcoin ETFs have been approved. So it's been about a month or so. So we'll look at all the data to actually figure out, are institutions secretly selling Bitcoin? Are they actually buying Bitcoin? What are the real numbers in terms of inflow and outflow? And all of this FUD that you have been hearing about Grayscale, is this actually certain institution exiting, or is this just simply Bitcoin holdings from TradFi players shifting hands to other funds? So we'll get into that with real data from the past 3.5 weeks. And after that, I'll also give you guys my opinion on where Bitcoin could be heading next and my strategy now that we're out of this choppy period from the Bitcoin ETF launch hype. Okay, so if you're new here to the channel, welcome. My name is Dennis. I'm a crypto angel investor for the past 5 years, and I have invested in over 100 crypto companies. On this channel, I share my views on market trends and investing strategy to build wealth in crypto. Okay, so before we get into the charts, let me just show you briefly what I'm talking about, that things that most likely everyone have already seen since the ETF has come out. So there had been a ton of these different headlines in the past month saying, Grayscale, they're the biggest dumpers of Bitcoin post ETF launch, how these guys led the Bitcoin ETF approval hype, but subsequently they became the biggest seller. So while this is true, the biggest takeaway from this right away is that the real inflow and outflow of all Bitcoin into institutional funds, into ETFs, have actually been positive for the past 20 days since the ETFs have been approved. So we'll look at some real data right now. So the best sources and official sources to follow for this would be, again, James Seyffart, the ETF analyst from Bloomberg, that have been covering these daily inflow and outflow data from Bloomberg Terminal, Bloomberg Intelligence directly. So every day they have been covering these inflows and outflows, both on the daily. So you can see on the top right here, daily inflow for yesterday, February 5th, and then daily outflow, right? And then here, the total volume of inflow, which is how much money have come into all the funds, versus outflow, or how much money have been withdrawn or sold, selling from Bitcoin out of the funds. So they have been tracking these, and TLDR is that in the early days of the ETF approval, there were a ton of selling pressure, right? Especially coming from Grayscale. So the biggest volume always have come from Grayscale for this month. So you see on average, Grayscale, is on the early days, they were exiting $2 billion worth of Bitcoin out of the fund for the first 5 days. But you see, even in the early times, we have seen a very similar number of inflows into other funds. So you see here, the second one here is iShares, which is BlackRock's Bitcoin fund. Third one is Fidelity. So these guys are true industry giants in TradFi. And these two added up to actually a positive versus Grayscale's outflow. So right away you see here, yes, Grayscale had such big outflow. It was very alarming, but at the same time, a lot more money has flown into these other funds. And we have consistently seen these in the past 17 days. So you see the total flows over the past 17 days. Grayscale have seen a $6 billion exit, right, of money flowing out of their Bitcoin ETF, whereas iShares and Fidelity totaling about 5.8 billion, right, and the other ones totaling another 1 billion or so. So on average, not on average, in aggregate, for all funds over the past 17 days, it's actually a positive. So you see here, total positive here, $1.6 billion of inflow into all 10 Bitcoin ETFs. So don't let this big red number scare you. This is just because Grayscale is the main one that money is flowing out of, but it doesn't mean they're the only player that matters, right? The total flow is positive, which is good. So we'll also get into why this is happening. So let me just give you the reason why this is happening. So why are people specifically exiting the Grayscale Bitcoin ETF? And why are other funds seeing positive flows while Grayscale is seeing negative flow? Is Grayscale just evil? Are they dumping Bitcoin? This isn't the case, right? So to understand this, we have to understand how Grayscale is structured. So Grayscale's GBTC is the oldest and still the world's largest Bitcoin ETF today, but it was a trust before. So what that means is that before the ETFs came out, Grayscale's GBTC Trust was the only instrument that institutions can use to speculate on the price of Bitcoin. But the big caveat before the ETFs were approved is that Grayscale was in only, right? So when you buy a GBTC, right, they put new Bitcoin into the trust, but you could not redeem those Bitcoin. You could not withdraw them. So this has led to a large discount or a large price difference between how much GBTC or the Bitcoin Grayscale Bitcoin Trust was trading in price versus real Bitcoin. So you see here in this chart, over a 3-year period, right? You see in 2021, when we were in the last bull market, the GBTC fund was trading actually as a premium, right? So when Bitcoin was a hot commodity in the bull market, a lot of institutions were buying into GBTC and actually saying, okay, like we're willing to pay 20% premium just to gain exposure to Bitcoin. But you see in the bear market since 2021 in March, this was when Luna collapsed, FTX collapsed, and Genesis, one of the sister companies of Grayscale, also collapsed. And this put Grayscale's legitimacy under huge question, right? So a lot of people needed to exit out of the GBTC trust, right, to de-risk in the bear market. But remember, they could not redeem GBTC for real Bitcoin. So what happened was they would essentially just trade GBTC, sell them at a loss, and get their money out. So they were willing to take a 20% haircut and sometimes as low as like 40% haircut in 2023 in order to convert their GBTC into cash. So this is what led to this huge price discount for GBTC versus real Bitcoin. So this was in the 2023 bear market. So what happened here is that eventually this discount came back up towards zero because in 2023, towards the late summer 2023, most people realized, okay, Grayscale is still fine, right? And most likely, before they even collapse, these guys will get a ETF approved, and the trust has a decent chance to be converted to an ETF, which means after that point, they can get their money back. So this is why you see the discount started to rebound, right? So instead of people constantly selling for a loss, people realize, okay, actually, I can actually buy GBTC at a real cheap price, right? So people were buying essentially cheap Bitcoin for 44% off in July 2023. And all they needed to do was take a small bet, educated bet, and wait for 6 to 8 months for the Grayscale GBTC trust to be converted to an ETF. And then after that point, they know that this premium will close, this discount will close, because after that point, the instrument again becomes legitimate and it has real Bitcoin backing. I'm not sure if it can be redeemed today, but certainly this discount will close. So that was why you see this discount eventually rebounded back up from negative 44% to today, 0%. So there were a lot of people, a lot of institutions especially, that went into this trade in 2023. And this is the first reason why the Grayscale Trust gained huge amount of GBTC Bitcoin holding in the bear market. But they are they're seeing an outflow now because this discount there is zeroed out now, which means there's no reason people would buy more Grayscale Bitcoin Trust because it's no longer cheap. It's at the same price as Bitcoin. And at the same time, people that have bought GBTC for cheap in 2023, they are now taking profit. Imagine you're an institution and you saw this trade and you were willing to bet that GBTC was going to get converted to a real ETF. Then you bought Bitcoin in June 2023. You bought Grayscale Bitcoin in June 2023. And then now, for each Bitcoin that you bought, for each GBTC you bought, you can convert that to essentially like 1.3 real Bitcoin today. That was huge, right? So a lot of people are taking profits from that trade. This is why right after the Grayscale Trust got converted to an ETF, a lot of people were exiting. So this is the first big reason. Second big reason is because of Grayscale's fees. So when you look on Grayscale's official website, what are the product's fees? So GBTC charges an annual management fee of 1.5%, which includes all the costs associated. This doesn't seem like much, but this is actually really big compared to other ETFs, right? And this is another recommendation as well. If you are specifically looking for a US-based Bitcoin ETF, fees is really important, right? So here are all 10 of the current ETFs. Is it 10? No, they're actually 11. And all their management fees compared. So you see Grayscale has the highest fees here, 1.5% per year. Whereas others, even from TradFi giants like Fidelity and BlackRock, they have 0.39 or even 0.25% fees. These are really low. So this is another reason, right? It might not seem like much, but if you're putting in $1 billion into Bitcoin, that's a huge difference, right? That's a difference between, paying $150 million, $15 million per year versus like $2.5 million per year, right? That's huge, right? You're saving like $10 million. Why would you not do that? So this is why a lot of people are large players that used to speculate on Bitcoin using the GBTC instrument is now exiting it and going for these cheaper fee ones, such as Fidelity, BlackRock, etc. Why would you not do that, right? These are much bigger, much more legitimate TradFi guys, so I would do that as well. And you see these even have special discounts, right? No fees for the first 6 months or for the first 1 billion of inflows. These are just much more attractive. So this is number 2. And I believe there's a number 3. Let me check here. Yeah, number 3 is that in the early days of the Grayscale ETF, because GBTC is the oldest Bitcoin trust instrument, a lot of weird players were involved as well. So specifically, I'm talking about FTX. So you guys remember in the FTX bankruptcy estate, they have had a large amount of GBTC holdings. And in the late stages of 2023, they were approved officially by the judges to start selling all of their holdings. These include not only like on-chain tokens, FTX stock, FTX holdings of Solana, etc., but also $1 billion worth of GBTC. So once the GBTC ETF was approved, they were finally being able to exit this. So this is why in the first 2 weeks post ETF launch, FTX sold about $1 billion of Grayscale Bitcoin ETF. And this explained a lot of the outflows as well, because this was forced selling. This is a rare case of forced selling, and that amount was actually exiting out of the fund. And now this amount is actually fully exited. FTX does not hold any GBTC anymore. So this is a rare case, but again, this is already over. So this is the third reason why we saw a large amount of GBTC exiting. Okay, so TLDR is that 3 reasons Grayscale saw a large outflow in the first 3 weeks post ETF launch. Number one, a lot of people were taking profit from the GBTC discount trade. Number two, GBTC or Grayscale has a large management fee versus other players. So if you're a large player, large whale, you will want to move your funds to other ETFs. Number three is that FTX forced to sell 1 billion worth. But these are all over now. So realistically, how much selling is it going to be going forward? And can we actually say that this was all a big FUD and Grayscale, even though money was exiting, more money is flowing in? Is this true? So let's look at the real data. And the best place for this, there are two. So to track these Bitcoin ETF inflow and outflows, there is a Dune Analytics dashboard, as well as a website called sosovalue.xyz. So I have pinned both of these on my Twitter or X. So I just tweeted about it here. So make sure to follow me on Twitter to see this. You can go check this every day. So looking at these two data, these two are not exactly matching up because they're a little bit out of sync. The Dune Analytics dashboard is up to date for today, whereas the social value one is up to date from yesterday. So, but TLDR is that most on-chain data agree that looking at the top 10 Bitcoin ETFs today, there's about between 0.5 billion to 1.5 billion of positive inflow to all Bitcoin ETFs in the past month. So you can see this very clearly from all the on-chain holdings. These are real Bitcoin addresses from these ETFs and showing how many Bitcoins that they actually hold. So you see here, this is a pretty good chart here to look at. This purple one is how much Grayscale holds. So yes, the total amount that Grayscale holds has been constantly decreasing, but this total chart is slowly increasing here, right? So from January 10th, the total amount of Bitcoins held in these ETFs were 619,000. Today, that is at 630,000. So that is a net positive inflow. This chart is also interesting here. Again, this purple color is Grayscale. So you see Grayscale is pretty much the only player that has been selling, whereas every other fund, such as Wisdom Tree, Franklin Templeton, VanEck, Invesco, Fidelity, BlackRock, 21 Shares, they have all been buying, right? So clients of these TradFi ETF funds have all been buying, and they have been absorbing Grayscale's sell pressure. Now, today's chart is a little bit weird. It shows that Fidelity and BlackRock, 21 Shares, BlackRock, they have had a little bit of outflow today. Actually, a very big outflow from Fidelity today. I'm not sure why. This isn't fully reflected yet on other dashboards. So I'm going to check back on this tomorrow. Maybe they're just moving addresses. We're going to see tomorrow. But even considering this, we're still at $500 million of positive inflow. And if today's data is a outlier, then we're looking at 1.6 billion of positive inflow. So this is big. This is positive. And summarizing from this data is that, yes, Grayscale is seeing mass exodus, but all of those selling have been eaten up by the buying pressure from all 9 other funds, which have all seen positive inflow, right? So you see here, these green numbers, these are cumulative net inflow since their launch up until February 5th. So you see all of these are positive in green, and the only one that's negative is Grayscale. Very positive, right? So this is the first takeaway. Funds are buying except for Grayscale. Number two, how big is this number actually? So for the past 3 weeks, right, the cumulative number, total inflow is as large as 1.6 billion into these Bitcoin ETFs. This is a good comparison here. So out of all ETF inflows in January, top 10, right? Top 10 all ETF inflows in January. These are not just Bitcoin, not just like weird markets. These are things like comparing with iShares S&P 500 ETF, Vanguard S&P 500 Index, Invesco QQQ Trust, BlackRock US Equity Factor. I'm not sure what this ETF is. So these are like traditional equity markets ETFs. Even compared to those, the two ETFs that have seen, the two Bitcoin ETFs that have seen the largest inflow, namely BlackRock, iShares, and Fidelity, actually rank in the top 10 in January for inflows. This is actually huge. So you see net inflows here in January. So BlackRock's ETF saw 2.6 billion inflow. Fidelity's Bitcoin ETF saw 2.2 billion in inflow. These are comparable numbers to BlackRock US Equity Factor ETF, which was 2.8 billion inflow in January. So these numbers are big. No question about it. Bitcoin is clearly getting attention in the ETF markets, and you cannot ignore these numbers, right? These are comparing every single ETF out there. So that is a good sign, positive sign. So yeah, definitely something that I'm very happy to see. And let's see. One other thing I wanted to mention is that my stance on how I'm treating this ETF announcement is that 3 weeks ago, we made a live stream on January 10th, right when the ETFs were approved. And basically, my approach then was that a lot of people were going to take either direction in the ETF announcement. You know, we already saw people trying to sell the news on the ETF post-approval, right? And technically, this did happen a little bit, where Bitcoin dropped to 39,000. But then it has already rebounded to 43,000, which was honestly the exact same price on January 10th, post-launch. So you can go ahead and rewatch my live stream that day. I specifically said I'm not going to touch Bitcoin or trade any Bitcoin for the next 2 weeks or so, because it's going to be very choppy. People are going to take big directional swings in either way, and I don't think anyone will be right. So the only way to see is waiting out this initial period and seeing if real institutional inflow is coming in, looking at all of the ETF numbers. So now that we have had 3 weeks of this real data, I am now confident in saying, yes, there is real ETF inflow in these US TradFi ETFs, about $1.6 billion of positive inflow in the past month. So that is positive, and that will lead to a slow grind for Bitcoin, but surely a positive movement eventually. So jumping off from that point, let's just look at Bitcoin price a little bit here. So Bitcoin is pretty much just in a parallel channel here. So my parallel channel is a little bit further. It's not exactly at this wick here, but I would draw the channel as low as 37.6K as the bottom of the channel. The halfway point is right about this consolidation range, around 42K. And the top of this channel was when we had this peak here at 47K. So as long as we are in this range, I would say you could take a trade for, a trade within. So let's say if Bitcoin comes back down towards the bottom of this range, you could bet for a trade like this, right? Where you long the bottom of the range, stop loss right below the range, and take profit at the top of the range. Subsequently, like on the other side, you could do a short position on the other side and take a short position at the top range of this range, stop loss right above the range, and take profit somewhere at the bottom of this range. So you could do either of these trades. While we are in the middle of this range, I really don't think there is a trade to be made. And just to show you guys where this range comes from, if you look at a long-term weekly time frame, this range dates all the way back to January 2021. So you see here, bit of consolidation here in January 2021 in the first run up in that bull market. So price peaked at 37.8. And then in the first wave of the bull, first correction here dropped right around 47. And then you remember this period when Bitcoin was trading just from 30K to around 37, right? So top of this range here again, touch this range. Back here in December 2021. And then in the first crash in the early bear market, Bitcoin managed to bounce from this 37.5 level, bounced to touch 47K again before really dropping into a prolonged bear market. So there's a lot of price confluence around this range to essentially mark out this price range here. This is why I'm using this wider range as potential trade opportunities. Now, if you want to bet on the longer term, upside for Bitcoin, there's two things you could do. Number one is, honestly, this is not even something I'm just saying. These are things that I'm looking to potentially get in. So for longer term position, if Bitcoin drops towards the bottom of this range again, let's say even at 39, I would say that's good sign to start accumulating for a longer term position post ETF and going into Bitcoin halving and other catalysts this year. If this doesn't happen, and if we just get a clean breakout above 47.5K here, then I would get in on the breakout retest here. And this kind of a position also makes sense, right? If we can get a clear confirmation above 47.5K, I would buy into a more speculative medium-term position around 47.5K on the retest here. So both of these can play out as a kind of medium-term trade going into the halving. Okay, so that's on Bitcoin price. And lastly, I want to bring you guys' attention to a little bit of a headwind that we could be seeing even as soon as next week. So you guys remember how FTX was forced to sell $1 billion worth of GBTC in January, and this has caused, not directly caused, but led to a lot of panic on January 26th. This actually matches this dump here really well, right? January 26th-ish. So we could be seeing another scenario coming from Genesis. So Genesis is one of the sister companies of Grayscale. Both of these companies have a parent company called DCG, Digital Currency Group. Genesis is a hedge fund or a trading firm from them, whereas Grayscale is their Bitcoin trust. So Genesis actually is bankrupt, and they will be forced to sell $1.6 billion in Bitcoin. And you see here, bankrupt crypto lender Genesis filed a motion on Friday asking a U.S. judge to approve the sale of $1.6 billion in Bitcoin, Ether, and Ethereum Classic held in Grayscale's trust products. So this is actually GBTC, not real Bitcoin. So if they sell, if they sell these, we could see a little bit more either FUD or like direct outflow, which causes a little bit of a buy the dip opportunity going into next week. So if this motion is approved, the market could see yet another significant chunk of selling pressure on Bitcoin. Again, referring to the FTX forced selling here in January, coincided with the price drop to 39,000 from 49,000. That's referring to this drop right here, right? So we could potentially see that. And so this is something in the immediate short term we should pay attention to. If this gets approved and if they actually start selling, we could potentially see a kind of buying opportunity like this right here. So this is immediately interesting, and this is why I wanted to bring it up. But nonetheless, I don't think this is much to worry about. Once they sell, we probably will see a similar scenario where as they exit these GBTC positions, the other ETF funds will just eat it up again. That's most likely the scenario that will play out. So overall, I'm not too worried for long-term sake, but there should be a kind of a buying opportunity on this dip. Okay, so that's the potential headwind. And last but not least, if you are interested in this kind of ETF-based trade, you guys know how I have been very bullish on the Ethereum ETF going into this year. And I have pinned this on my X or Twitter as well of why I'm betting heavy on Ethereum for the next 4 months. So TLDR there is that I really believe the Ethereum ETF from BlackRock, from these TradFi giants, will get approved with a high chance, about 70 to 80% in May, which means we should be able to see a very similar speculation trade going into the potential approval in May. And this is why, if you follow a lot of these ETF news, if you like trading these like institutional hype, Ethereum is a much better bet for this next 4 months. So check out that video on my X, and you can also find that on my YouTube as well. Okay, that's everything I have prepared for today. So thank you guys for joining the stream. 2 things before we get into the Q&As. Number 1, if you are interested in more trading related content for how I'm looking at the Bitcoin trade setup, going into the Genesis forced selling of Bitcoin, whether there will be a buy the dip opportunity here, make sure to join our Discord with the link in the description, or go to discord.gg/virtualbacon. This is where I'm going to be dropping, day-to-day Bitcoin alpha, trade setups, trade alerts, etc. And I will be closely watching this Genesis potential forced selling and entry opportunity for us. And there are over 23,000 members in the Discord. So if you are looking for a community for this bull run, this is the place to be. Number 2, make sure to follow me on Twitter or X at virtualbacon0x. This is where you can find real quick alpha before I make them into in-depth videos and live streams. Basically, I do research on Twitter and post them first before we consolidate them into videos. So definitely follow me there as well. And yeah, last but not least, for the links in the description, there's one very specific link that you should check out, which is the GRVT exchange link. This is a decentralized exchange that is launching on zkSync as their first hyperchain partner. And there is a very, very high chance that by participating in the early launch of this exchange and trading on there, you should be able to get a guaranteed zkSync. They call it mystery box, but it most likely will be an airdrop. And this will happen quite soon. So check out that link to make sure to not miss it. Okay, that's it